think. Okay. Well, I'm almost overwhelmed with this build-up, but it's true that freedom has been kind of at the center of my existence for as long as I can remember. Some of my, he mentioned his fist forming when he's watching the news or something. Some of my earliest memories were of my father pacing up and down in the living room. The radio would be on, and there would be a fireside chat going on with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And the fist formed because he knew that Roosevelt was violating the Constitution and all the basic principles of Americanism, that he was going against. In fact, he was as bad as King George III. When you read that train of abuses in the Declaration of Independence. So I came by this stuff early, and I remember at various times kind of resisting what I guess is my destiny. I used to say sometimes in frustration, I hate politics. I don't want to do this, you know, I don't want to talk about it or think about it. And then in school we started getting, you know, we were fortunate. We had really good schools. Now I refer to them as Northwest Ordinance schools instead of just public schools. And there's a reason for that, but I didn't know the reason initially. I was in 8th grade when I learned about the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And of course, for those of us in Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, that's very important because it was that ordinance that set up the rules for how we would become states. And one little part of that ordinance is the only place, the only mention in the federal founding documents of schools. And why is that? Well, because schools are an individual matter, they're a family matter, they're a church matter, they're a community matter, but they are not a federal matter. It's right. Yeah, I sense some people that are really frustrated with what's going on in the schools, and rightly so. But the particular sentence in that document is very telling in view of what they're trying to do to schools today. In fact, what they have succeeded all too well in doing to schools today. The actual one federal mention of education in the founding era says, and I quote, as memorized at the behest of Mrs. Tanner, who taught history in 8th grade at Oakley School, Walker District number 4, way back when, they said, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means to education shall forever be encouraged. Not owned, not controlled, not regulated, not stymied, not stifled, not harassed, not federalized. It was to be encouraged. People were encouraged to teach their young at home. The one thing the federal government did to aid this in the days when shipping was a very iffy and expensive proposition, especially out toward the frontiers and so on, they gave a special postal rate, commonly called book rate, and it was to cover books, manuscripts, and musical scores, because those were all related to education. That kind of federal interference I can stand. Anything that lowers the fees and the taxes and all that stuff that they've imposed upon us is generally a good thing. And contrary-wise, anything that increases their power over us or their hold on our wallet, and have you noticed the claw marks in it? Anyway, anything that lessens their power and influence is good, and anything that increases it is probably bad. So with that, I'd like to back up a little, though, and kind of depersonalize and go to the bigger picture. You all are familiar with at least what you learned in history and from your subsequent reading about the founding era and so on. But something that I think was sadly neglected, and certainly is nowadays, but was the European background. Why did people care so desperately to come here? And I'm sure there's a number of reasons and so on, but there were several underlying principles. One was the whole attitude of Europe in general, that there was this hierarchy of human station or whatever, and the kings ruled by divine right, supposedly, and everybody under it, you know, took their bit. There had been feudalism for, you know, generations, where we've got the lord of the manor in the castle, and he lets out his land to the citizens with the deal that they do all the work, but he'll defend them if an enemy comes. And then, of course, some among them were also called into that defensive service. But the idea was that people almost belonged to other people. And then, to deal with another little issue, worldwide, every country, every culture you can think of, they all practice slavery. Now, you wouldn't get that idea if you went to a modern public school. In a modern public school, everything is wonderful cultural diversity and everything's fine everywhere, except America had slavery. How wrong is that? And then sometimes they even defame our Constitution by trying to say that our founders were bad because they didn't immediately phase out slavery. They put a 20-year moratorium on that, more or less. But when you think back to all those wars and persecutions in England, well, let's kind of narrow the focus again. I've mentioned in conversation with some of you just at the book table a couple of individuals. One is William Penn. Now, you all know that William Penn was a famous, well, became a famous Quaker preacher, and it was for him that the state of Pennsylvania is named, and of course you remember that Philadelphia, the first city, was the city of brotherly love. And all of that because of his particular take on the Bible, and the Bible as a peaceful thing, as calling on Christians to be at peace with each other, and so on and so forth. And that's all right. But back when he was in London and preaching, he was a lawbreaker. He had run afoul of the Conventicle Acts, which basically said you couldn't open your mouth about religion unless you were spouting the line of the Church of England. Well, of course, he had bones to pick with the Church of England, and felt compelled, as a part of his conscience, to talk about what he knew from reading the Bible and so on. So he was arrested, and I believe at that time it was a capital crime to go against the Church of England. But he had a jury trial, and the jurors thought the thing over, and it was